Welcome to Inside Property Development. I'm a SME property developer myself and have worked in the house building industry for 40 years this year. It's actually more difficult than it's ever been, and at the same time we've got a bigger housing and affordability problem than we've ever had before. I'm really interested in helping get that solved. The way to do that, I believe, is to get inside and behind and all around property development to understand how it really works and therefore what the problems are and how we can all solve them together. Obviously, it's property developers of all sizes, but it's everyone else in the industry as well. Of course, it's the people we work with, it's architects, it's planning consultants, it's ecologists, it's all the experts and specialists that we work with. And it's also, of course, local authority planners and planning committees and local residents and people that might be impacted by what we do, and NIMBYs that don't like stuff anywhere near where they live, and YIMBYs who would actually like much more good development where it needs to be, and basically everyone involved in the process. Because one of the problems is the for a long time the industry has been pretty confrontational. People haven't been working together. People haven't seen or understood other people's points of view. That's all been very, confrontational right from the beginning, which is not good for anyone. And one of the reasons for that, I believe, is because many people are sort of looking at things just from their own point of view. They're not seeing the bigger picture. They don't realise what it's like for the other side, and that is in itself one of the problems. There shouldn't actually be any sides in this. I believe we should all be working together in order to help get good housing and commercial space as well. And then hopefully between us all working together, we can understand each other's points of view and the challenges that we face, and hopefully eventually get more good quality, sustainable housing created in the right way. Now, as well as all understanding each other's points of view and working together and collaborating, it's worth talking about who is actually going to build the houses. Yeah. Now, I'm particularly focused on supporting and helping SME developers and smaller house builders. And in fact, I've got a whole another business I set up 10 years ago specifically designed to train and help and support those people. And one of the reasons for that is because there's not enough of them and they are rapidly declining. And one of the reasons for that, in fact, the main reason was the complexity of the planning system. What happened is historically, most of those house builders and smaller developers were builders and contractors, right? They were really good at building houses. They'd find land, get planning permission relatively quickly, build some houses, sell some houses, on to the next one. Fantastic. But what happened since the late 80s, the planning system started getting increasingly complicated and complex and expensive. And it got to the point whereby, just being a good builder was no longer and still is no longer good enough. You need to have to be an absolute expert on planning and getting through all of the red tape and complications that you now have to deal with. And in actual fact, up to this point in time, there's now more of that than there ever has been. You can imagine for new people trying to come in and make it work and grow a business, it's not surprising that, they either go bust or give up very, very quickly. Now, I don't know what the latest survey numbers are, but I suspect it's even less than 2,500 now, as things have continued to get even worse since that last report in 2017. One of the things I'm hoping we will all be able to do here together is help support and encourage and train and teach and share with SME developers. Right, just a quick one. Whether you are a massively experienced and well-established property developer already, or maybe you're a new or aspiring one, either way, you will know that it is really not easy to find viable opportunities, to come up with the best scheme, the best design that's going to maximise the land value and fully de-risk things for you, and then to go on to get the very best planning permissions as quickly as possible. However experienced you are, you will know that that is not an easy thing. I have put together a super detailed scorecard based on my 40 years experience in this industry, reverse engineering everything that I've learned, including lots and lots of mistakes over the years, and everything I've done to maintain, touch wood, 100% planning track record. I'm pretty sure there will be stuff that you don't know. Go and do that scorecard. Find out just how good or not your current process is, and I absolutely guarantee you will learn at least a little something, if not a ton. So it's bit.ly/MLA score, all in capitals. You can do the Millbank Land Academy scorecard. I absolutely guarantee you will find some interesting stuff, and it will help you get much better deals. What is the grey belt, and is it going to solve the housing crisis? So, well, it's going to help, I think, and but first it's worth talking about what exactly it is. And the answer is, well, we don't really know yet. At the time of recording this, the NPPF consultations are currently being considered by the government, and the new revised NPPF has not come into place yet. So we don't know exactly what that's going to say, but based on lots of things that have been said to date and a bit of sort of common sense, really, we can probably guess what it's going to be. Okay, so and I've got to tell you, I mean, the cleverest thing about the grey belt is the name, the fact that whoever's come up with it in government or their policy advisors, it actually sounds like it's the sort of stuff that does need developing, doesn't it? The grey belt. Whereas in fact, it is still green belt land, but it's just green belt land that is perhaps not very good in some way. Now, not very good in what way? I mean, that's really good, like the $1 million question, right? But what I think the whole idea, it's sort of differentiating, or at least making the point that not all green belt is what lots of people imagine it to be. Certainly not the general public. So, lots of people, I think, believe that green belt is all beautiful fields and forests and things like that, and the stuff that we should be, in an ideal world, trying to look after and protect. Yeah, and so not surprisingly, when you get talk about developing on the green belt, people imagine you're chopping down trees and building on fields, and obviously they don't like it. So politically, it's not very acceptable. Whereas not all green belt is like that. Might be able to add in a little image here. I'm currently here filming on one of my latest developments, which was a green belt site. It is an area of outstanding natural beauty, and it's immediately adjacent to ancient woodland. So this site here, which I've now finished, and it's won a load of awards, by the way, is classic, what probably will become known as grey belt. Nevertheless, it had a massive negative planning history, had 35 years of refusals, 8 refusals on this site before I came along, largely because of its green belt designation. Yeah. Now, when you see the pictures of it, that will, if you're hopefully on YouTube, if you're online, if you're listening on your Apple, what's it or whatever it is, you can go to YouTube, check out Inside Property Development, and see the pictures if you want to, because I think you may well be amazed at what some greenbelt sites can look like. I mean, this place here was absolutely diabolical. Had lain vacant and derelict for years and years and years, covered in horrible old buildings. It was a real mess. Certainly not what people would imagine the greenbelt or an area of outstanding natural beauty to be. Nevertheless, that's what it was. That's how some greenbelt is. And clearly, sites like this needed putting into some sensible use, need clearing up. When there is a massive housing crisis we need to help solve, then they should some of them be really good opportunities for development. Now, this one, it was a real mess. There was no doubt about the fact that it was far from green. But then, of course, there's going to be a lot of things in between. So the $1 million question really is going to be, well, okay, so how messy, let's call it, does a green belt site have to be before it becomes classified as grey belt? And remember, there isn't an official description or definition yet. I suspect one of the things, one of the criteria will be, is it previously developed? So PDL, previously developed land, which basically means it's had stuff, more typically used to be known as brownfield land. It's had buildings on it in the past. Maybe there's still buildings on it. Could be just hard standing, some sort of structure, as long as it hasn't merged into the landscape. That's one of the issues at the moment. Now that sort of exclusion may be taken away. I don't know. Yeah. So if there's been buildings on the site on the past, whether you can see them or not, that may end up being classified as grey belt. Another change that might come in, interestingly, this site here was actually agricultural. So because it was agricultural, it couldn't be classed as PDL, previously developed land. So amazingly, if you do see the pictures of how this site was, it's a green belt site covered in horrible old buildings that wasn't, as far as planning was concerned, previously developed land. Absolutely bonkers, really. So those are a couple of exclusions that might get taken away. Okay, so and probably should, to be quite honest. Now, this is all subject to another sort of key consideration, which is really around accessibility and sustainability, particularly to local amenities and transport and things like that. So, i.e., not remote. So for example, if there is a previously developed site that is let's just say in the middle of nowhere, so you can't really, access anywhere from it without driving. Now, clearly that isn't really very sustainable. So there's an interesting argument to be had around, well, okay, what do you do with it? It's built on at the moment, or it has been built on previously. So it could be, in theory, demolished, cleared up, housing, and most of the time I'm sort of talking in the context of housing, could be developed, but it's not very sustainable because it's quite remote. So there's an interesting question around grey belt. To what extent does remoteness and things like that come into the equation? And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's like, well, how dirty is it? Let's call it. Is it really in a state like this place was, or is it, I don't know, it's just had a bit of rubbish dumped on it, or a little bit hard standing and a couple of sheds. So it's obviously a big degree of potential difference in terms of grey belt sites. So, and then of course you've got to come back to all of the normal green belt tests regarding encroachment between settlements, openness, things like that. So it's now. So let's jump back to what I would imagine will be pretty much a dead cert. If you have got a green belt site that is on the edge of an existing settlement, and ideally filling in a gap or rounding it off and things like that, all your normal sort of stuff that's got green belt potential, and it's got or had previously developed buildings on it, then I would think that is going to have a very, very high chance of consent, particularly when you, of course, factor in 5-year housing land supply and housing need for the area as well. So as you can see, I don't think it's going to be black and white. It's interesting. It's not going to be black and white. It's going to be grey, isn't it? See what I did there? So there is a real, as always, right? It's going to be horses for courses. It's not going to be one size fits all. It's a matter of fact and degree with everything, but those are all of the considerations. So ideally close to existing settlements, ideally a bit messy, so it's not farms or fields or forests, So might have had stuff on there before. That I think is what will become known as the official grey belt, and it is that the stuff that will have, I think, massive potential, particularly when you factor in the 5-year housing land supply argument. So that's it generally, and so to sort of answer the main question is, will it solve the whole housing crisis? Well, not on its own, but absolutely there is massive potential there, because there are a lot of sites like that that really should be developed and could be developed, and they are in sustainable locations as well, but they just haven't been, and they've been pretty much no zone goes. Well, God, Jesus Christ, what have they been? Hang on, I'll get out of a minute. They have been pretty much no-go zones, just because of the green belt designation. So I think that's the sort of craziness that's probably going to be taken away by the grey belt policy. I think that's the whole intention behind it, and it is actually a time of big opportunity in terms of finding and developing these sites. So, how do you find them? Well, this podcast is sponsored by Landtech, Land Insight. So using tools like that, and in fact, interestingly, Landtech have done a few quite interesting reports in terms of how to find them. You can actually quite easily search for various planning uses in the green belt, i.e. all the E-class uses, for example, almost by definition is going to, that means it's going to relate to a building. So buildings in the green belt, commercial uses in the green belt, they are going to be massive opportunities. But probably, and now this is the sort of biggest issue, the biggest question is, well, are you actually ever going to get planning permission for them? So yes, if and when you can make the right arguments, and we've talked about some of the criteria and the problems already, but more importantly, the question is, well, are they actually going to be financially viable? Because at the moment, the talk is around a minimum of 50% affordable housing on grey belt sites. And I've got to tell you now, in most places, it's really difficult to even get a 50% affordable housing to work on a greenfield green belt site that is going to be the cheapest thing there is within, to develop. When you've got grey belt sites that almost by definition are going to have demolition and probably contamination and things like that, meaning all things being equal, they're going to be more expensive to develop than greenfield sites, then they are going to be even less viable. So I think viability really is the whole key around the grey belt conversation, because if the government and local authorities try to stick and demand hard and fast, it's got to be 50%. I think we will get very, very, very few grey belt sites developed. So that's the opportunity. And that's the issue. But in order to, for more housing to be created from grey belt sites, planners need to be sensible around the whole viability discussion. And that is basically that. So hopefully that very quick run through might have been of some use. Once the policy is out and we've got the new NPPF, we can delve deep and have a proper look at what it all means. But until then, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to Inside Property Development. Please remember to like and subscribe. Do join us every week where we'll be speaking to house builders, developers, experts, planners, and everyone involved in trying to get more much needed housing created the right way. We'll learn together how we can collaborate rather than fight, and by working together, we can all help create better places, spaces and homes, and a much more beautiful world.